The following program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.
Hello, I'm Carl Seidel, host of The People's View. The show is sponsored by the Nashua City Republican Committee, and if you like to attend our meetings, they're the second Thursday of every month at 6:30 at the Crown Plaza. And if you want to find out more about our organization, you can go to nashuagop.org to see our website and learn about the events that we have.
Welcome to The People's View.
Hello, and help me welcome Dave Schoneman. Dave.
Carl, thank you very much.
Welcome aboard, and you're
Always
now
a pleasure
running
to be
for
here.
Senate in District 13, which
Yes.
is, 6 of the 9 wards in Nashua.
That's right, 6 of the 9 Nashua wards. It's wards 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, and 9.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a relatively small dimension-wise, but I think it's the largest district in terms of population.
Is it?
It's certainly the densest, most densely populated district. So.
Well, in a way, that's good for you. It's
That's right.
easier to get around and knock on the doors. But people know you. You've been an alderman for 2 terms.
Yes.
And they know your history, your fiscal responsibility
That's right.
for the city and everything, because I know you were making sure that we kept a tight belt on that budget.
Well, that's the whole objective. I took a very strong loyalty to the taxpayers in Nashua. I think it's very important. We have to be responsive to these people's money. Government doesn't earn money, really. People might like to think the government earns money, but government does not earn money like a business would earn money. There's really no competition. Government takes our money. And whenever we take that money, I think we have an obligation to spend it very, very wisely. I think we need to spend it at least as wisely as we spend our own, and perhaps even more conservatively. So I took a view that was always emphasizing what the taxpayer interest might be and trying to make sure that we got good value for the dollar that was spent.
Well, I think you looked at some of these requests for funds and stuff in a way of if it's a continuing program, you want to know whether the program's doing what it's supposed to be doing.
That's very, very true. We have to know if we embark on something,
right.
We need to know, we have to monitor it. How well is it really doing what it's set out to do? And we have to have the courage to say, you know, this program or whatever may not be doing, or it's doing better, so we fund it more. It's not doing as well, and so we pull some funds back. But it's very important to keep track. I think it's part of the accountability that we have to taxpayers. We don't just embark on a program and just kind of let it run. We have to really check.
Well, that's very important, not only, and in the state too. I mean, you're going to be with only 24 senators. You're a very important person there.
Well, I'm hoping that we're going to maintain the same discipline there. When I say we, I'm talking about me and my campaign, my family. We're very much doing this together as a family, hoping that we're going to maintain the same discipline there. In fact, we're committed to maintaining the same discipline there as we did in City Hall. The constituency is going to be larger and perhaps more diverse in some of their needs and requirements, but I firmly believe that if we work hard enough towards a solution, we can find a solution that doesn't pass with 50% versus 49% of the vote support. If we work hard enough, we can find something that will garner a larger percentage of public support. And that's how I think we can work together to find the best solutions. And those best solutions are really going to get the support of most of the taxpayers.
Well, you had that situation with the aldermen. You were not the majority. You had to bring along some people on the other side of whatever kind of
we certainly did.
division
And
there was.
sometimes that worked and sometimes it didn't, but we always try to make an argument that's as reasoned as possible, that looks out for the taxpayers, not only in the ward that I represented, but in the wards that some of the other aldermen represented, and that would really be responsible to those folks and to the needs that the city has. And sometimes we prevailed and sometimes not. Politics, you know, politics would be great if it weren't for politics. And too often, a political question becomes a turf battle.
Right.
And if it degenerates into that, then I think many folks lose sight of the job that we're trying to do and end up defending turf that that's not what we're there for. We're not there to defend turf.
What do you anticipate is going to be your biggest situation that you have to work harder on next year? If
well,
you get
I
elected, the budget's the first thing we really think about.
Budget is certainly very big.
Right.
I think that we want to grow our economy too. I think we need to do more to attract good businesses, entrepreneurs to the state. I've been out knocking on doors, and I've had a number of conversations in a few different wards. And one of the things that has been a consistent element in people's thoughts is that we need to do more to attract better paying jobs, companies that can offer better paying jobs to folks. We have a lot of retail, certainly in Nashua, and that those are good jobs, good jobs for folks. But we want to have more of the high-tech companies come in and establish a base here and seek their employees here in New Hampshire. So I think that's going to be one of the challenges that we have. There are a number of things we can do. I think we should certainly monitor what's going on with business taxes. I think we see what has happened to the overall U.S. economy with some of the tax cuts that Washington has put through. The economy's booming. Not for everybody yet, but it's definitely on the move. And it wasn't on the move for a long time. I think the same thing can happen in New Hampshire. Now, it's true that we have a low unemployment rate, and I'm very glad to see that, but we also have a state that is relatively stagnant in terms of population growth. So if we have a low unemployment rate, it could mean that we have a tremendous amount of jobs. It could also mean that we don't have as many people. We're not attracting people. Right. So I want to see what we can do to draw in more businesses and simultaneously draw in more people who want to build their homes here and raise their families here. Because if we have a stagnant population, if we have no growth, basically, that's not a good situation economically to be in, because it really means that while the rest of the world or the rest of the country is growing, if we're just holding our own, that's not actual growth. So in order to make that happen, we need to bring businesses in and bring people in who want to work in them. And then even though the employment rate could bump up a little bit depending on the timing of the influx of population versus the timing of the influx of businesses, in the long term, if we can expand the economy in New Hampshire and keep the unemployment low, I think we're going to succeed. And one of the things that we need to monitor carefully is how competitive we are versus other states in terms of business taxes.
Well, one of the things, Nashua is, as you say, a pretty developed city already, but it does have a number of business parks and stuff in it and around it.
Right.
Do you see somehow working with the adjacent communities to grow the greater Nashua area?
Well, certainly Nashua is a relatively built-up city.
Right.
And if there's things that we can do outside, maybe in Merrimack, pushing the borders a little bit, not actually expanding the physical borders of the city, but working in conjunction with some of those towns where we can work together to draw businesses into an industrial park that might actually be outside the city, I'd be very much in favor of that.
Hey, I don't know if you know, I'm on the rail committee for the city.
Okay.
And while the major objective is to get a train up through Nashua up to the airport, I thought that they ought to be looking at it from a little bigger objective, the business area that's all around the airport. How do we get some of our people up there? Is there buses up there? No.
I don't think so. I don't know of a bus that goes to Manchester Airport. Maybe there is, but I don't know of one.
Well, there is one from Manchester that goes there.
Right, but not from here. Not from here.
And the industrial park is, I don't know how many thousand acres it is. It's a large.
It's a large
facility. And you have people down here on off of Spitbrook Road that's developing a lot. And you have some over on Hudson that are developing. And somehow getting an intercommunication area, I think, might be better for people who either don't have a car or only have one car and two people working.
Yep, I think it's a great idea. Transportation is critical, and we have, I think, pretty good bus service in and around Nashua itself, just downtown. But to expand that a little bit, I've flown out of Logan a number of times, and one of the advantages that Logan offers is there's bus service from Nashua Exit 8 all the way down there. And I've often thought, why isn't there bus service from here up to Manchester Airport? I'd much rather fly out of the Manchester Airport. It's closer, better facility in many respects, and it would be a much better
I think
opportunity,
sometimes
much
they
better
worry
alternative.
about losing all those parking slots up there, but there are people that don't have the transportation, don't have that car that they could
Right.
drive up there and leave it until they come back.
Right. Right, which is why I took the bus
Yeah.
down to Logan,
Right.
because I didn't want to leave a car at
Yeah.
Manchester. Even though it's so close, I didn't want to leave a car there. There are times I would take a cab or whatnot, but I think that having a facility, having the ability to take a bus up there would be great. And I think Manchester, well, it's still a state issue perhaps, but the Manchester airport is not as busy with airline travel as it once was.
Right.
And I think that anything that we can do to facilitate passenger travel, passenger access to that airport, will ultimately go to strengthen and expand the airline travel out of Manchester Airport. So we would certainly have to look at those kinds of things. It's a wonderful facility, but I mean, I'm in aviation, and I've flown in and out of there on a little airplane. It's a great airport, and just a great facility. And we need to encourage airline travel there. And one of the ways to do it is to make it easy for people to get there.
So what do you see as operational things? We have, for example, the epidemic of the opium-type drugs. How do we see the state doing different than what it is doing?
That's a very, very serious problem with deep roots, I think, in our society. It's not just a small problem. I mean, it's really big, and I think the roots go all the way down to the point where we have to ask ourselves, why are people not seeing that their life has meaning or value or a future?
Right.
And these aren't the kinds of things that we're going to solve by more treatment programs. Treatment is important. Treatment is going to perhaps reduce those numbers a little bit, but it's doing nothing to affect a change in the underlying deep-rooted problem. And it's hard. It's really hard. But I think that whatever we can do to encourage folks to have hope. And I think part of that, believe it or not, comes down to behavior. One of the things that I've heard from folks as I'm walking the neighborhoods is that they're very dissatisfied with the divisiveness and bickering that goes on all levels of government. We see what happens in Washington. We read about it, and we saw in the newspaper last week what's going on in the National School Board. So from Washington all the way down to the school board. These are good folks, but what happens in these political arenas? And I think someone who's coming up in the world, a high school kid, maybe a college kid, sees all this division,
Right.
and after a while says, what's the point?
Yeah.
What's going on here? And then rather than engaging it and wanting to change, they may be more susceptible to finding an escape path, which could be drug related. So it's things like that. I think doing the best that we can as adults in positions of leadership to conduct ourselves in a way that earns respect, I think could in a small way begin to create an environment where someone might think, you know what? I want to do what those guys do someday and have something to work towards. It might serve to create a little bit of hope. Also, of course, that people need to have an economic future, need to be able to buy a home or think that that's going to be possible. One of the things I'd like to take a look at in Nashua here on the state level would be to see if we can create a tax abatement structure for someone who's going to buy and occupy a multifamily home. When I bought my first home a number of years ago, that was a big help. I bought it in a town where I didn't have much for a down payment, and the house was a big house, multifamily house, but there was a tax abatement to me if I stayed in the property. And they wanted to encourage families or folks that came into homes to stay, to invest in the neighborhood, to help grow that. And I think there are things that we can do to lift people up, to give them an opportunity, to encourage them to try to do better and give them hope and a future. And I think to the extent that we're able to do that, either, like I say, by example or by direct opportunity, I think we're going to create an environment that might foster more actual, real hope.
Do you see any kind of programs that are helping to do that besides the abatement? type of approach?
There is a group out of Manchester called Teen Challenge. It's a faith-based group. It's a residency program. It's very inexpensive. In fact, I have a show on Access Nashua too, and I had a couple of those guys on about a year and a half ago. It's a residency program, so it's treatment-based, but it's also not just detox. It's actually trying to help someone create a better life. And for a very small sum of $750 a month, I believe, it's room and board, so that's less than rent would be in many cases. And people talk about how expensive these programs are. That one is very inexpensive, and it's got a very, very good success rate.
I hadn't heard of that.
Yeah,
That doesn't get enough publicity, I think.
Well, they're known out there, but they maintain a low profile. They're not clamoring for public dollars. They're not trying to big name for themselves. They're just letting people know through their networks that they're there and that they offer.
So it's going the next step after detox and everything.
Right. It's a residency program that you sign up, you're in it for a year. It's not just a month, 30 days in and out. You're in it for a year, and they help you find a job at that point, and you're given responsibilities in the homes, and it's very involved, but it rebuilds a person's life. And I think if we have the expectation that if we detox somebody, they're going to be able to rebuild their own life, it's not going to happen. No. Because those elements that cause the lack of hope and the frustration and the depression in the beginning, they're still there. They're still there. And until those issues are addressed. So as we look at the drug and the opioid crisis, I think we need to take a broader approach, and we need to really deal with some of these underlying problems. Because if we don't, it's not going to be solved. It's just not going to be solved.
Well, Nashua, while it doesn't have as much of a problem with immigrants as maybe Manchester has because it's a larger city, it does have a lot of people that need help that acclimate to the U.S. type of life. Do you have any ideas on how to help them do that?
That is another interesting situation too. And like I was saying before, politics would be great if it weren't for politics. There's kind of a change in immigrant assimilation thought over the last 20 years or so. It used to be when my relatives came over from Germany, my mom's folks came over, the goal was to become an American, not a German American, but to become an American, and to learn English, to teach their children English, to get the kids in school, to become part of American society, to really be American. Today, there seems to be a movement. In fact, they've dropped the word assimilate. It's no longer assimilation, it's now integration, which means that the host country, us, needs to adapt to the rules and social norms of the groups coming in. And that's politics. That's politics. It's compartmentalizing groups into separate tribes. As much as people, bemoan that we're becoming tribal, well, we're creating systems that foster tribalism. It's this group or that group or this hyphenated American or that hyphenated American, and that's a more complex problem. But I think that if we can work to actually assimilate people, I think individuals who come, by and large, still want to assimilate. Someone doesn't leave whatever tormented country that they came from and hope to replicate that here. They could have stayed there. I think they're hoping for a better life, an American life, because the American life is held out as being better. And really, empirically, we have the best system the planet has ever seen, and we have more opportunity for more people here. Someone can come here and work hard and make it, and that attracts people. But it succeeds most for those who assimilate, rather than for those who remain compartmentalized. So we should do everything we can. I think that's individually, neighbor to neighbor, to befriend people that come in, to help them become, to get integrated, to be not to use that political term, but to really to assimilate into American life. There are agencies that help people do that, and we just need to be careful as we choose agencies that the government will fund. I think we need to monitor, again, to make sure that what we're encouraging is assimilation into American culture, not a separateness. And to the extent that we can encourage assimilation, I think we can encourage those folks.
Good. The reason I brought that up is in a paper recently, I saw another graduation class of the ones who are learning English. And I thought that's good, but I don't think we really push that enough. I see the problem existing in the schools because, they try to teach kids who really aren't verbal enough with the language to handle some of the requirements of going through the school. And I think they suffer for that, but the adults too. I think we ought to look at one thing is pushing that so that it's available on weekends or even early evening, so that other people, whether they're working or they go to school or whatever, are getting that chance to integrate the language and everything and learn that, and that makes them more able to get along in everyday situations wherever they live.
Absolutely right. We speak English, and we have to be able.
Right.
Someone has to be able to speak.
I think that's it's not that we went through the country the situation in the early 1900s and the 1800s actually, where people grouped because they had language problems.
Sure.
But that assimilated by letting them have their cultural groups at the same time integrating them into the normal everyday groups of activity. And that all really depended on them being able to understand the language.
I think that's absolutely right. We hear the term multiculturalism a lot today, and multiculturalism, I think, is very, very dangerous. We are the United States of America.
Right.
We have an American culture. It doesn't mean that people aren't able to speak other languages. It doesn't mean, someone once said that I was against having a Chinese restaurant in the neighborhood. No, not at all, because a Chinese restaurant is not multiculturalism. It's American with the flavor of folks that have come here. Right. The key thing is assimilation. We're not asking anyone to give up their language or to give up their culture, to give up their habits. But there is an overarching culture here in the United States that is an American culture. We're asking them, I think we should ask them to join that culture. And that's, I think, what they came here for. So we need to help folks join in our society, but not to join in a pocket that is got a wall between, that's isolated. We don't want people to isolate. That's not good. That fosters the tribalism. Right. It fosters all the division that we see in politics. Again, I think we need to set an example. We don't want to have this group compartmentalized from this group, from this group, from this group.
And the kids sort of group that way too, and then they get into gangs, and that's what you don't want to have.
No, we don't.
That's not acceptable. But encouraging ethnic groups to get together and celebrate their ethnicity is fine.
Oh, it's great.
But make sure that we don't make it build up walls too that way.
Yes.
I mean, we still have clubs that have different feast days or whatever you want to call them.
Sure.
Here, and I think we all enjoy seeing a little bit of specialized dancing and all those other things that go along with that.
That's right.
But so I think that's one of the things we ought to support more of, both on the local issues and on the state issues. And I don't see the state getting too involved with that, but I think they ought to be able to support, if nothing else, the language, immersing the people in the English language, those type of groups.
Yeah, I think it would certainly help any immigrant who comes in to be able to get along in our society.
Well, how do we get the people to vote for you, David?
Well, I'm happy to talk to anybody. I'm knocking on a lot of doors, and I'm happy to answer any questions. I've got a website, davidschoneman.com. Schoneman. You can reach me through there. We also have a Facebook page, David Schoneman for NH State Senate, a Facebook page that my wife Shannon takes care of. And so there are many avenues. Those two avenues are really the best. I have a telephone number certainly too. It's 603-809-5204. That's our home number. I'd be happy to take calls and answer questions. It is important to me that I do everything I can to maintain my own personal transparency in government. I believe very strongly in transparency in government. So if someone has a question or has heard something and wants clarification, I ask you, please, reach out. I'm happy to talk to anybody. And I think to the extent that we can have these dialogues with people on either side of the political spectrum, and I'm really very much in the middle, I think, of the political spectrum. As you know, when we run on the state level, we have to declare one party or the other. You can't say, I'm an independent and I'm running for office. You have to say, I'm a Democrat or Republican. And I've chosen to run as a Republican because I'm a little more, I think I'm more focused on saving taxpayers' money than I am on spending taxpayers' money. So that puts me on that side.
Yeah.
But I think that I bring an independent-minded thought process, and certainly I think I've demonstrated as an alderman civility in the aldermanic chamber when things, were sometimes not very civil.
You had 2 good years on there. I mean, 2 good terms.
2 good terms there. 2 good terms there, and we want to bring the same kind of a thing into the State House. So it means being able to engage people, and so certainly on the campaign trail, we're very anxious to engage as many folks as we can.
Well, do you need some people to help you with signs or pass out literature or anything like that?
Certainly do. The district is relatively small, but there's still a lot of people there. We have a lot of literature to get around, and I'd be very happy for anyone who wants to volunteer and help to address envelopes, to hand out, walk neighborhoods with me, to introduce me to their friends, to host an event, to hold signs, or to be a sign location in their yard. So if anyone has any interest in any of those things, I would ask you again to please send me an email, david.schoneman@gmail.com, or call our number, 809-5204, or reach out to us through our website, davidschoneman.com. We're very anxious to hear from folks and looking forward to building a team.
Okay, and the big thing that you're going to solve, big problem, do you have any idea what that's going to be, or are you going to just wait and see when you get elected, you see what's there?
Well, we're going to see what's there, certainly. But the things that I plan on focusing on are growing our economy, attracting businesses, attracting families here, whether it's through tax incentives for the owner-occupied multifamily homes we talked about, or for businesses, and then doing whatever we can to begin to create a different tone so that go after the root causes of opioid problems, and I think try to create an environment of hope. So that's a little softer, a little harder to lay out A, B, and C, but those are the things that I'm really focusing on doing.
Yeah, I see that too. You're going to encourage more business to come into New Hampshire in our area, and that gives a little bit more funding for some of these things that require funds to work it out.
Absolutely right.
Well, David, thank you very much for your time.
Carl, thank you very much for having me.
Good luck on your election, and we'll see you again, I'm sure. Okay.
Thanks very much.
The preceding program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.